All right, we're going to start the uh, Committee for Facilities and Operations. We have a few topics that we're going to need to discuss today. What I first want to do is just do an introduction, and we'll start over in the corner, sir.
Hi, I'm Terry Proctor, Communications Department.
And we'll start with the table, and then we'll go around to the outside.
Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer.
Julia Brown Edwards, board member and committee member.
Gary Hollins, board member and committee chair.
Amy Constam, committee member, board member.
Herman Green, board member, community member.
Jonathan Garcia, Chief of Staff, PPS.
Joe Grellier, Director of Risk Management.
Doug Hancock, PBS, Engineering and Environmental.
Clark Nelson, PBS, Engineering and Environment.
And we'll start over here.
Pat Davis, Climate Justice Advisor.
Ann White, real estate and planning.
Patrick LaBeouf, Director of Projects and Construction, Facilities.
Brianna Cresswell, Senior Director for the Office of School Modernization.
Brian Taylor, Director of Maintenance. Aaron Pressberg,
Will Howell with the Communications Department.
Kirsten Cowden, real estate manager. Kathleen Young, I'm grandmother.
All right.
Jeff Mounts, parent of two at Stevenson.
Lauren Bernstein, parent of two at Vernon Elementary.
David Main, Communications Manager for the Office of School Modernization.
Liz Large, contractor general counsel.
Garrett Bradshaw, Executive Assistant to the Office.
Sam Powell, board manager.
My name is Ivy Green. I'm a Philadelphian.
Armin Milazzo, Director of Construction for OSN. I'm trying to.
Natasha Grant is project manager for the Office of Operations.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do we forget, Miss? Somebody that walked in the room?
Hi, everybody. Maria Sagan, Director of Communications and Language Access.
All right, we got some people in the back over there.
Hi, Sydney Kelly, our PPS comms team.
You can get a chair and come in here, though. You don't have to be way out there.
Thank you. Unless you want to.
Yeah.
Everyone, Miss Tom's intern.
Tommy.
All right. Did I see somebody else just walk in?
No.
Somebody.
You good? Everybody.
Not right here. Introduce yourself. We're doing an introduction.
Yeah.
Tyler Brown, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. PTA.
All right. All right, I think that's everyone. Try to grab a chair somewhere. All right, so this is the first meeting of this year for the Facilities and Operations Committee. I wanted to go over a couple things, either some housekeeping pieces before we get started. We want to make sure that we are being respectful of everyone, not just in this meeting, but on emails as well. When we are having communications, when it comes to the Facility and Operations Committee, I would ask that they be directed toward either me or Dan, so that way we can disseminate it out to those that need to have this information. What I do not want is to have a bunch of different emails going out to different people from crossing everyone's wires. If you don't want to do it through the Facilities and Operations Committee, then I suggest you just find your own way of getting your information or finding a way to get your issues or information across. But I do not want that whole cross-contamination of information and emails from everyone. So that was just kind of the first thing. The other thing is, want to make sure, want to do a little different this year than last year. I heard from some of my colleagues last year about how we did public comments. And so what we're going to do this year is we will have public comments only for agenda items, and we will have those public comments right after those agenda items. So for instance, if we're talking about like the revitalization stuff today, whoever want to speak about those agenda items will speak after the presentation of that agenda item. So I listen. Yeah, I listen. And I think that was going to should be helpful. We're going to have 4 spots after each agenda item. We're going to have 2 spots for folks that are in support, and we're going to have 2 spots for another point of view from folks, because everybody might not agree. But I want to make sure that we hear all the points of view that could be out there within those limited spots that we're going to have. We're going to limit those spots to 3 minutes each. And then that's going to be it after the comments, and we'll move on to the next topic. If there are some questions that is raised during those public comments, we will take note of those questions and try to get back to you in a timely manner. So just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page of how I would like to run things this year. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns about those? Awesome. All right. So let's go to the first board agenda item.
Okay.
Great. Actually, we'll start it and turn it over to the team. So thank you, Vice Chair Hollins. Good afternoon, directors. It's good to be with you. I'm pleased to introduce the first item on air quality. Joining me to lead the conversation will be Chief Operating Officer Dan Young and our Director of Risk Management, Joe Kraler. Also joining them are our partners at PPS Engineering, who you heard from earlier. One of the PBS Engineering Environmental is one of Northwest's top environmental engineering firms who serve as our air quality experts. You can read about their credentials in the memo that we shared with you ahead of this meeting. First, I think it's important to set the context for this discussion. Last May, the Oregonian published a story about PPS classrooms' air quality, focusing on only one component, air changes per hour. Unfortunately, this specific focus on air changes has caused some to wonder if our classrooms are safe. I want to be absolutely clear. Our air quality is safe. How do we know? PPS follows the Oregon Health Authority's multi-layered approach to air quality to prevent the spread of disease. 2, PBS experts have determined that, quote unquote, PPS buildings are safe, and you have them here to ask them questions. And 3, we continuously review our systems with the help of PBS and other public health experts. And just a few hours ago, we received a communication from the Oregon Health Authority that expressed, quote, appreciation for the steps that improve indoor air qualities in PPS schools, unquote. As directors know, on Monday, we reached out to the Oregon Health Authority seeking clarification on whether they had a specific recommendation for how many times air should circulate per hour. You have this letter and their response, which we received a few hours ago. I doubt you've had time to read it, so let me share what we heard directly from the Oregon Health Authority. That they do recommend, quote, 3 to 6 air changes per hour, along with implementation of other best practices for public indoor spaces. I want to thank the Oregon Health Authority for the direct and clear response to the question. They're crystal clear that air change per hour are, quote, one tool in the toolkit, unquote, and we wholeheartedly agree. They're also crystal clear that, quote, having a lower number of air changes does not mean an automatically increased risk of disease transmission, unquote. And they point us back to whether we're using a quote unquote layered mitigation approach, which we are. So here are the bottom line, directors. Our classroom air quality is safe. Number 2, we are confident in our air quality practices because we follow public health and air quality experts' recommended practices. And we agree how often air changes in a room does matter, but so do all other elements of ventilation. And number 4, we have a plan in place to continue to improve air quality throughout our district. In fact, stay tuned for significant upgrades to 4 of our schools, Lent, Bridger, Kelly, and Harrison Park. As a learning organization, we remain committed to continuously reviewing the guidance and the best practices of experts to ensure a safe and healthy learning environment for our community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Thank you, Jonathan.
John, can I ask something? Has that letter been posted in
It has.
any materials?
Yes, it has.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Joe Crowley, Director of Risk Management. Let's see. We have a slideshow that'll be up here shortly. As Jonathan said, we take the health and safety of our students and staff seriously. The air quality is safe in our schools. We continuously review the systems, and that is the mechanical systems are constantly reviewed quarterly by a third-party contractor. And changes are made, repairs are made if the existing systems.
Speak up a little.
Okay, sorry. I was saying PPS is contracted to check mechanical operational condition of every air handling system quarterly. So we're constantly checking to make sure that what we have in place is functioning as designed, and filters are changed every 6 months. Next slide. Jonathan shared the description of the ongoing communications with OHA and how that's developed recently and even up to the last few hours. I'll have Doug and Clark talk for about 2 or 3 minutes on what they see and how they determine that air is safe. And they can kind of describe that as they have for us previously and stand for any questions you have. And then I also have them adding a little bit later on in the presentation about all the different elements that make up safe air. But Doug and Clark?
I'll take this. Without exception, all the school buildings within Portland Public Schools were built to code. Within those codes, there were requirements to provide for safe air. As years went by, codes changed. Sometimes they get better, sometimes they get worse for air quality. With respect to the 70s, when with energy efficiency, they tightened buildings up, which really caused a lot of grief. But by and large, buildings that were built under code are safe. It's very well acknowledged throughout the country that, you know, if the building's maintained, it was built to code from in the modern era, that it is safe to occupy. Now, in the context of COVID, there's clear evidence that keeping kids out of school was not safe. There was all kinds of deterrents and detractions to that dynamic. And moving them into these schools that already existed was, without exception, considered the best thing to do, acknowledging that those school buildings are safe. We've done testing in all of your schools, very cursory, but found that their existing ventilation systems, as supplemented with portable units, are safe environments for children to participate in their educational trajectories. Are they perfect? Nothing is perfect. Working with absolutes is not, in my opinion, constructive. It's a very complex world in characterizing indoor air quality. If you pick apart any one component of it, you could dig your heels in and say, argue with me that it wouldn't be better that classrooms had more windows. I mean, you cannot. But that's to say, that's a different argument than, are these classrooms safe? And it is very much my opinion and my firm's opinion that those classrooms are safe for kids to come back to school in.
And also, I will add that both the studies we've done and the work that the data we've seen that Neudorf produced are consistent with what you'd expect to see in buildings of this age and diversity. So we didn't see anything that appeared to be unsafe at all. So just our opinion based on all of the information that's been provided and collected ourselves.
So I think what I would like to pause here, I think for this section, and if there are any questions.
Question. All along, throughout the pandemic, on a whole variety of things, we've always said we're going to defer to the experts and ask for their recommendations. So I really appreciate that PPS sent a really clear set of questions because of questions that had been raised. And when I read their answer, I'm not sure and this isn't, I'm not sure I think their answer, it's a little bit confusing to me because they talk about airflow and circulation are part of a layered strategy, and then they talk about layered strategy, and they talk about like masking and other things, like some things that aren't doing. and maybe it's just the way they've written their letter. So my question is the layering that PPS has done, this may be the question for the experts, is that, does that create enough of sort of the pieces to create, because they do have a recommendation, it's not a requirement, a recommendation on air exchange, but all the other things that we actually are doing, because we're not requiring masks, so that doesn't really work anymore. But the other things we're doing, those things combined is how you come to your recommendation, your assessment that the air quality is safe?
Yes.
Sorry, that was a long question.
Yes. Air quality. What is it? Oxygen, nitrogen, airflow, temperature, humidity. In the context of communication of illnesses or in an industrial setting, an exposure to a chemical, it's separating the source from the actual potential receptor of that contaminant. So in isolating and identifying and preventing people from coming to school that are presenting symptoms, that's improving air quality in the classrooms. And it's those components, when it analyzed in whole, manifest in a safe environment. And that is how we feel the environment is in the Portland Public Schools. Would it be better if all schools were brand new and to modern code? I would say very likely. Or would they would still be safe. I mean, they would be nicer. They would be maybe easier to pull buses in and out of. They would be bigger, taller ceilings, have more space between the desks, but they would not be less unsafe.
So then just thank you for answering that. And then, because I think their letter could be, could not completely clarify things. Because they also talk about opening windows, and of course we have some places that the windows don't open. So my follow-up question is, Jonathan, you specifically mentioned four schools, just given they're in outer southeast. I know that's not
not a coincidence.
But I'm wondering what did you find there, and what is the remediation at those four schools?
Sure. Obviously, I would defer to our chief operating officer, but I just want to acknowledge a point that you keep making. We did get this letter just a few hours ago. You can expect a response asking for further clarification. And I think I agree with you. There are some areas that we could receive further clarification. So I just want to note that for the record.
Yes. So part of our plan for continuous improvement is doing large capital improvements in our schools. And so we passed a bond in 2020 that's $75 million specific for ventilation improvements. So the first scope we're seeing coming out of that is we have these first schools that are in design for full retrofits, mechanical retrofits. So we're looking at other scopes of work such as mechanical system controls, which help improve ventilation and air quality as well. But we looked at the data we had and what our worst performing schools are from a ventilation standpoint, and then we had an outside consultant come in to help us prioritize what would be the most effective improvements for best return on investment, and then where would they recommend that we go with. So those are the four schools that we're starting.
So that was part of our bond planning work even
Correct.
Before COVID.
So it's not because
Correct.
So it's not because they have something that's worse that the data points to, like we should do something, but it's more the bond plan.
Status of
Well, it's overall performance of the systems, whether that be ventilation, whether it be are we able to maintain temperature and comfort? Do we have a lot of system breakdown? What's the age of the system? So all of those were taken into consideration to identify which schools needed the improvements first.
Because I haven't gone back and looked at the data, but is it, if you looked at the data, it would be like, oh, those are the four we need to do, or is it looking at these broader, like, systems breakdown and then other things that the public wouldn't see?
Well, it's
Or information.
I'm not sure if I follow, but it's taken all the data that we have. So we have work order data, we have facility condition data, we have other assessments, and we had this contractor go and do specific assessments. I think it was 21 sites, if I remember right. And so, because these were our 21 worst performers based upon our And so when they took the more detailed look, this is what their recommendation was. We start and prioritize our improvements. That's not where we're stopping, but that's where we're starting.
When we were looking at the data for the schools, or we're accumulating data, checking the air, did we check every school within the system and every portable within the system? And then when we did that, or if we did that, is there a report that identifies, or a document somewhere that identifies the level of air quality in each one of the individual schools, higher or lower, across all of the schools, that we made the recommendation to come up with, to say, yes, the air quality is solid? Or was this a more like a spot check situation where we do a random pull a name out of the hat and we're going to try these type situation?
We had two different types of testing done. We had PBS Engineering Environmental do a sample set of air quality, and I'll let the guys talk to that. And then also under Aaron's direction, we had another firm do airflow checking. I believe that was in every room. It was in every room. So the IAQ was a sampling, the airflow was in every room. And each school has its own freestanding report. Like the PPS reports, for example, conclude at the bottom that I find this air is safe, they're not unsafe. And then it's a lot of data. So is there a conglomerate report, I think is kind of what you're asking for, like a summary report, all locations? Not at this time. It's just it's a school by school report, and it's available on the web, has been for a while, so anyone can look at it and see what's going on in the school. And they're point in time measures. The airflow measures give us a measure of the system, and those systems are checked quarterly. So we are working on the expectation that float's there and it's checked quarterly. The spot check is only a point in time. And Doug and Clark, if you could add maybe a little bit more about what is IAQ and why things can change from a spot check to a spot check.
Sure. I think to answer your question, the indoor air quality tests were 20% of all occupied rooms in each building, of all school buildings of the districts. So we did look at all of the portables. But in a larger school building itself, we would have looked at 20% of the occupied rooms. We measured, we went through and just did a spot check to look for anomalous conditions that might be indicative of a failed ventilation system. If the temperature was way off, or if there were high levels of CO2. And some of the tests we performed were during class or recently after class, some were when there was no class. So we had a whole mix of operational conditions that we took, but it was a representation of a good number of classrooms and workrooms in every building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Also, simple particulate is part of that. Respirable particulate was also part of our effort too. So we're looking at small dust.
And the design of that effort was on the heels of Chicago opening their public schools, and they came up with this rubric where they would look at classrooms and workrooms in every building and then only a percentage of them, to just again get a holistic sense of how the building was doing after having been closed up for an extended period of time.
But the other study that we did not do, they did do room by room.
And they
So
tested
two studies, we
every
did 20%, they did room by room.
Okay. But one study, that's what I was trying to get to, was because it sounded like, for one, we were taking sampling, but I wanted to know if we were going like every school, every classroom, every portable, but it sounds like we did a combination.
Every building
Yes.
got actual air quality tests, and then every room had the ventilation tested.
Next slide, please.
For time check.
Yeah,
Chair.
time. Do we have any other comments from the committee members first? Then I'm going to take two comments from the audience. Do we have any other questions, from any of the committee members?
I'm good.
We got two questions for this topic out from the Got a question?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
With the recent climate change and climate spike during September and August, sometimes we have partners in the building. There are some schools without air conditioning. Buildings are really hot. Any progress in helping those schools get air conditioners?
That's a good question. I'm going to turn over to Dan and Kat Davis, our climate justice advisor, to tag team. Maybe we can start with Dan and then Kat.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Yeah, certainly we've seen some pretty high temperatures, and in recent years we've seen more of that. And so we have some efforts that we do, when we hit those higher temperatures, to keep the buildings as comfortable as possible, including during the night running the ventilation systems, asking staff to open the windows in the morning when they get there to try and start with as cool as possible. But adding central air to buildings, that's a long-term commitment. Those are significant capital improvement efforts. It's something that when we modernize a school, they get air conditioning. So we opened a new school this year. That's another school to the portfolio that has air conditioning. But going through and doing holistic changes, that's a part of this longer-term improvement plan, including our ventilation upgrades. So we just talked about 4 schools. They're going to have full HVAC retrofits. They will have air conditioning, and that's the way that we get to central air district-wide. So it will take some time, but that is the long-term plan.
All right, you got any other questions? So are you going to take the other public comments question?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure somebody else, they don't. We come back.
I would also just add really briefly that we are also working with our risk management team as well as others to develop a kind of short-term plan to bridge us to those long-term goals of different ways to mobilize resources to help alleviate heat in the schools at the beginning and at the very end of the school district, as well as identifying when does it make sense to have school closures around heat versus smoke or the other just abnormal climate events, with the goal of creating conditions for children to be in schools, because that's the goal. And oftentimes we're going to find that they're going to get the resources that they need to stay resilient during those abnormal climatic events. So I just wanted to echo Dan's words about the long-term vision, as well as recognize that we are mobilizing right now around what some short-term improvement opportunities could look like to mobilize in our schools. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? No.
People signed up.
No, I'm talking about people in the audience. Any other comments? If not, we can get your follow-up comment. All right, get your follow-up comment. Our question.
How do you prioritize this? I know that some schools have AC units, and now they have, the newer schools don't need the AC units anymore. My main thing is that Jefferson is really high, all right? And I don't think it's fair for a freshman to come into a high school and never experience AC in his high school career, because the modernization is happening after he graduates.
Yeah, it's a great question. Centralized air those are very large and very complex projects. So for example, the ones that we talked about that were in design now, those are multi-year projects. So those will take years to be able to upgrade those. So as Kat mentioned, we're looking at options of what we can do in the interim, but getting to full HVAC retrofits, new systems, modernized systems, will take some time to do.
So I have a little follow-up question to that one. So outside of doing the whole, central air piece for a older school, is there things we can do to have portable AC in those classrooms for schools like Jeff?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're looking at options for that. There are some challenges to portable units. One, our electrical systems are older buildings. We've got some schools that are well over 100 years old. They can't handle. They could probably handle just a few of those units because they require a lot of electrical power. So to even put in window units would require pretty significant capital to upgrade the electrical. They also have some maintenance and some safety concerns, especially if they go in the windows. If they're the freestanding units, those also have some concerns because they still condensate. They have water that has to be maintained regularly. Someone has to be able to do that. So we are looking at some ways to be able to do that in targeted areas, but we don't have the answers for that yet. But we're in a constant state of improvement. That is something that we're looking at.
Do we have any public comments on this?
Yes, we do. The first person is Orrin Bernstein.
I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
How you doing?
Cheers.
Access.
Thank you for letting me come again and speak.
I know I've been coming and eventually I'll stop bringing on the air filters as a little prop. So I just want to talk about portable air filtration in the schools. And in particular, I presented the idea of using these mailboxes. I gave some information. I got a response back. The response was very thoughtful and articulate. The response was also that they had some concerns and that they didn't want to pursue it. What I wanted to say is that, like, I think a lot of the concerns were not representative of the state of both the technology and the knowledge around these systems. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit, but I don't want to lose the very bigger context, which is I don't care that much about these boxes. What I'm trying to do is improve the quality of the air in the schools. And the knowledge around commercial filter units has come a long way, and you can find much more effective per dollar units than what we've been using. So like PPS is to be commended for having acquired units early on and like moved forward, but also like those units, I mean, compared to like these boxes on air clean per dollar, they're like 10 times worse. But even compared to like commercially available options, they're like 6 times worse or something. You know, like so there's just like a lot of opportunity to switch what we're doing as we're upgrading systems and as a temporary action to improve the air quality in the schools while these bigger projects are taking place. The expense associated with that is not tremendous, especially because you can get more cost-effective units and they're more available. So that's my bigger point. I'll jump back into talking about these in particular, the concerns with them, because that's my own little thing.
You got 30 seconds.
Okay. They were concerned that the air filters were MERV 13s and only filtered 0.75% of the air. But the airflow is so much more that it cycles it multiple times and cleans it more effectively. There were concerns about durability and longevity. These have been around for a year now, and they've been shown to last a year without degradation. In terms of durability, of course, they're going to be less durable than a sort of commercial unit, but they're going to be also more like cheaper, so you can just replace them. So I can stop. If anyone has questions for me, please, email me before. I can email more information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if any of you want to check it out or talk about it afterwards, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the follow-up on the commercial units to the extent that we're adding or replacing some of our first generation HEPA units. Jeff Mouse.
Hello. My name is Jeff. Sorry to make you turn around there. Father of two at Stevenson, and I work in the indoor air quality industry. I think it's important to acknowledge when we're talking about indoor air quality what it means, because it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and it's invisible, and we tend to forget about it, take it for granted, just like clean water. But air quality means equity. You can't have equity without indoor air quality. It's impossible. It means reducing absenteeism in terms of asthma, sickness, flu. It's coming towards us pretty soon. It means improving test scores, learning outcomes. There's studies that prove this. It's been documented since the mid-90s. If you want to find any of that information, it's available on the EPA Tools for Schools website. You can find a great 19-slide presentation that won't bore you. And it also helps with teacher retention. Who wants to work in an area where you're breathing air that you're afraid of or doesn't smell good or that you notice? You don't want to notice your air, right? It's nice in here, isn't it? I think the airflow in this room is probably great. I'm concerned about some of the testing that's been done. The airflow testing that has been carried out by PPS is awesome. You have an amazing inventory of where to start. That was a good move by whoever decided to do that. I know it wasn't cheap, but the cost of not investing in indoor air quality is much greater than anything else that you're going to face. And it's going to take some courage to get there. And probably it's going to take staffing people that don't exist right now. You probably didn't have a climate advocate 20 years ago either.
30 seconds.
That's where you're going to need to be. I got 20 seconds?
30 seconds.
So I would ask you to consider those several benefits way beyond COVID. We have what experts call a generational opportunity to invest in the buildings that we've all as a community inherited that are not up to the task of performing to modern standards. So I urge you to look into the funding that's been provided by the federal government to take steps to modernize and address those challenges. Appreciate it.
Any other public comments on this topic? Okay. All right, so right before we move on to the next agenda item, and I'm glad you brought up the equitable piece, right? We talk about equity and then we throw that word around a lot, especially recently. So I would like to find out if there's any data on air quality exchange, improving student achievements and performance. Because, bottom line, that's what we're here for. And if whatever we're doing is not going to improve that portion, then we need to make sure that the things that we are doing is getting us in that direction. So I would like to get some information. If you have that information that you talked about, can you please send it to me? I would definitely want to see that as well. All right, let's go move on to the next topic. Thanks for everybody for speaking. So the next one, so the next agenda item we're going to move up to climate crisis response policy overview.
Okay. We are going
Thanks.
to invite a couple of others to present on this topic. Introduce themselves. So I guess we won't do it again. Take it away, Kat.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Kat Davis. I'm the Climate Justice Advisor here at PPS, and I'm here to introduce this topic today. My role is to really oversee the implementation of the ambitious goals outlined in the Climate Crisis Response Policy, as well as other climate action goals for the district. So today we'll be discussing how the Climate Crisis Response Policy implementation timeline intersects with and interacts with other large-scale projects at Portland Public Schools, and specifically diving into how the Benson modernization timeline and history in conjunction with this policy goals are related to, especially the ones related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030 to net neutrality by 2040, and as well as the goals related to phasing out fossil fuel infrastructure by 2050. As well as using the policy as a standard to prevent new fossil fuel infrastructure from being implemented. So our goal today is really to provide transparency and clarity around the design decisions that were made for these large-scale projects, with this collective understanding that when a large-scale project that relies on policies and standards to design the project happens in the midst of those standards being changed, there's an opportunity for misunderstanding around expectations and clarity. So we're here to provide information around this timeline overall and how we came to these decisions. So I just wanted to kick off today recognizing that the district, in partnership with our really passionate community, is deeply committed to our climate action goals, and are excited to discuss how the Benson modernization, as well as other large-scale projects that are in motion, are all set to contribute to PPS achieving these goals. So, next slide.
Hi everyone, I think most of you know me. I'm Aaron Pressberg, Energy and Sustainability Manager in Facilities. So we wanted to start off kind of with a timeline of events as it relates to modernizations through the last couple of bond measures, and also the development of the climate policy. So everyone here knows that we've passed a bond in May of 2017, which included the modernization of Benson, Lincoln, and McDaniel. And then soon after that, McDaniel's design process began in March of 2018, and then Lincoln in June, followed by Benson in January of 2019. It wasn't until November of 2020 that the climate policy was first brought to the policy committee.
Also in November 2020, we passed a bond which included the modernization of Jefferson and the design of Cleveland and Ida B. Wells High School. Moving forward from there in 2021, McDaniel completed construction in July. Next slide, Dan. And then in the following year, March of 2022, the policy was officially adopted by the board. Soon after that, in June, Lincoln Phase 1 construction was complete. And then moving forward, looking into the near future, we're expected to have our greenhouse gas inventory completed by the end of November, which is kind of our first step on the operations side to get our baseline emissions as part of the policy work. And then in December, we're expecting to have the master plan for the Jefferson modernization presented to the board. And then looking way ahead to summer of 2024 is when the Benson modernization is expected to be complete.
So to give an understanding of what this implementation of this policy will look like, is to acknowledge that we are leading the nation in some really ambitious goals that require us to change our systems and the way that we operate as a district at large. And so this takes a really thoughtful and collaborative approach to building new systems to ensure that we're focusing on efficiency, equity, and, oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize, okay. Sorry, I thought I was being loud, I'm sorry. So basically, we're working on designing new systems, right, in order to achieve these really ambitious climate goals. And this requires taking a really thoughtful and collaborative approach as we focus on efficiency, equity, and quality when we're designing new educational spaces. So my point being is that it's not something that can happen overnight, which is why we have this implementation plan goal outline, which involves understanding where we are at, where we are going, how we will get there, and then also communicating this to the board and to the public and in conjunction with our community as we go. So this is an outline of what we're working on over the next year, just to get a good implementation plan so that we are doing this work thoughtfully and collaboratively. And so that way, when we are designing new systems moving forward, we can make sure that we have the systems in place so that regardless who is at this table making these decisions, we will have the infrastructure needed to ensure that all of our new infrastructure and our new policies are going to have our policy goals as our standard that we work from. So do you want to?
Sure. So this slide is intended just to show, kind of at a high level, and obviously a quick snapshot of the long-term plan for implementation of the climate policy. So I don't expect everyone to absorb all this real quickly, but the policy, was worked on, developed, and then was adopted in early 2022. Then that kicked off some kind of what we call pre-planned data analysis. Aaron mentioned earlier the greenhouse gas emission study that's being done right now. So that is going to help us understand where we are so we can then prioritize the improvements that will have the highest return on investment. So that work is happening right now. And we're also in the process of developing these individual implementation plans that will, that really will be the detailed plans of how we're going to get to these long-term goals. These goals are decades out. So we need to break them down into much smaller components, very specific actions with clear accountability and responsibility. So they'll probably be broken down by department. That might change a little bit, and certainly there's overflow between department with specific department goals and actions. And then, once those are in place, implementation is really going to kick off in earnest. Not that it's not happening now, lots of things are happening now. But these plans are going to allow everyone to align around the same work and get everyone moving in the same direction. So it's not just everyone in the district doing things that they think are best for climate. We're actually focusing on goals and we're prioritizing what our work is. We also know that we have the Climate Crisis Response Committee. They're going to begin meeting. They are going to report regularly to the board, who will monitor and report progress on meeting these goals. And it's also, what this does at the bottom is important to note that supporting this effort and meeting these goals is going to require resources. There's two primary ways, but more than two, ways to identify and support with resources. That is through the fiscal year budgeting process and through capital general obligation bond work. So all these things are really coming together, and the idea is It's a bit of, sometimes going slower goes further. We need, now that the policy is adopted, we need to take the time to create a cohesive, a rational plan, and then implement that plan and course correct over time. So that's what this is. And that the line that's maybe blue, colorblind, I'm not sure, is kind of shows where we are, right?
Before you, am I creating about the slide?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I asked that we just get this posted so that everybody has the benefit of this, but one thing I don't see on this is the target setting. And so there's kind of two big buckets of work. There's all the specific pillars, and then there was the targets, the setting of the goals, the reduction by 50 by 2030. Where is that in this implementation schedule where we actually set in 2024, 25, we're gonna shoot to be at this target. Like here's our overall footprint.
Right.
And then in order to get to the half, here's what we're gonna do in 24, 25, 25, 26.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask Aaron or Kat, but if you can think of what are a couple of good examples that we might think, maybe energy is maybe the easier one. Obviously, the policy is more than just about greenhouse gas emissions. It's about curriculum. It's about student involvement as well. But maybe an example of how do we break down those goals into smaller achievable goals, but to get
that's actually a more complicated question than I'm asking. I think so putting aside all the other pillars for a moment and just getting to the carbon emissions, where we said we're going to reduce it by half. So where on there are we doing the scope 1 and scope 2? Here's we admit X amount, and then in order to get to 50%, here's the target setting.
Yeah.
What you described as the prioritization process that comes after the greenhouse gas analysis.
I'm trying to see where it is in here because it's different from the pillars.
The greenhouse gas analysis, the third line down, that is what we're finishing up right now. So that's expected to be complete in November of this year. So once we have that data, we'll have the accurate numbers of our baseline data, and then from there we can say, okay, here's what half of that's going to be in 2030, and here's what carbon neutral is going to be in 2040.
What are our most high value decisions, our most high impact decisions that'll help us get to our goals?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just, again, from just an oversight and trying to keep the board at the right level, and I think that this came also out of the climate committee of so that instead of going into what are you doing on each sub pillar, but how are we getting to these what are the targets, and then at the end of the year did we hit the reduction that we're to get us to the 50 basically.
And that's the exact process that we're working through with the implementation plans that we're putting together over the next year. So that's going to take a really thoughtful analysis of where our greenhouse gas emissions currently are and understanding where our biggest opportunities for immediate impact are and investment in order that we can do over the next year to create a milestone map of where we're going. Does that help?
And that will be part of the work of the climate committee in terms of having a dashboard similar to our BAC dashboard, our bond dashboard.
Yes, this is to oversee how we're moving forward on those targets, as well as provide some feedback on them, and then creating a dashboard for being able to track them. But I guess the point is that we can't, we could set milestones without having that analysis, but it just wouldn't be very
I'm
accurate.
totally analysis.
Yeah.
I just think we should be really explicit so everybody can see where our decision making. That actually I think will get people out of the details.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
So we also wanted to highlight a few things that we're already doing. So, there are some things that we're going to take very careful planning, and implementation plans are going to run for the next, fiscal year likely. But, some of these we mentioned already, but the greenhouse gas inventory is in process. We're almost complete with that. The 2020 bond included $75 million for mechanical upgrades, and we have 4 HVAC replacements planned that are going to be all electric, complying with the policy going forward. Our transportation department has purchased 4 electric buses with the help from various grants. We have our climate crisis response committee appointed, and Kat actually won. And then we're in process on our construction implementation plan as kind of the first department to go through that process. And then the other modernizations as part of the 2020 bond, Jefferson, Cleveland, and Wells are going to be designed to comply with the policy of the all-electric buildings.
So we wanted to provide a little bit of information about the modernizations and other bond projects in particular, because those have been focus in recent conversation. I will do my best, but I can only speak so loud, unfortunately. So in the 2017 bond, of course, we know that Kellogg was in there, McDaniel, Lincoln, Benson, and MPG was started under that as well. Of those projects, they all started design before the implementation of the policy. With Kellogg, we did do a cost-benefit analysis of doing all electric, similar to the other projects. We did that for all of them. You'll see that information in the memo. Kellogg, because of the unique situation, it was an all-new construction on a clean site. We determined from the analysis that it was, in fact, cheaper to go all electric because we were not dealing with existing infrastructure and we didn't have to bring in new gas infrastructure as well. So there was a significant cost benefit to doing the work with Kellogg, even though it was not required by the standards at the time. The analyses that we did for the other modernizations actually showed that it would be more expensive because we were working with existing buildings and existing infrastructure, with the exception of MPG, which is going to be all electric as well. I do have an asterisk there. That's because they're gas Bunsen burners. We have not been able to find a substitute for that at this point, though we will continue to keep looking for that. But beyond that, we'll of course be doing all electric as we move forward with our 2020 projects. And in addition to moving forward with that in 2020, all of our 2017 projects had a significant number of design elements that respond to parts of the policy. So you can see we've called out some of those things: the solar array, the energy efficient HVAC, daylighting, high performance envelopes. These are all things that we've been doing for our modernizations to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and also essentially be in line with what we have in the policy now.
Thank you, Marina. I think that's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions from the community?
Well, I have a question. So when we're talking about the modernization in 2017, and it looked like we started the conversation about climate change in 2017, going about a few slides back. When we were doing the design stuff for, say, Benson, and we were talking about all electric piece, or that could have been an option, was that looked at back in 2017, even before the 2020, because you still was talking about it. Whether you just because we passed it in 2020 is one thing, but it was still, conversation was still there. So at that point, what was we looking at? I'm gonna let you answer. I'm just trying to formulate the question. Did we look at that back in 2017, knowing that that's what we were trying to go in the first place?
As part of the design process, we did do a cost-benefit analysis. However, all electric was not the standard at the time. And anytime you look at doing something beyond the standard, it also has to be cost-effective. It has to fit within the budget. And I think probably most of you recall that we've had ongoing budget concerns with Benson. We ended up having to increase the budget pretty significantly. We knew at that time that we had significant budget concerns already. We were doing value engineering to try to reduce those costs. Adding in something that was going beyond our standard and was going to put us even more over budget was not a good option. It's a similar conversation we have with anything that goes beyond our design standards.
So just make sure I'm understanding. So in 2017, when we were looking at the climate, started looking at the climate policies piece, we had a number for Benson High School. Well, the fact that Benson High School was underfunded in the 2017 bond, if we would have added those nuances in 2017, is it a fair assumption to say that if we wouldn't have gotten this 2020 bond, that we wouldn't have been able to do what we were going to do regardless if we wouldn't have got the 2020 bond? I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but
I can maybe answer that
Okay.
because we had committed to the Benson community, even if the 2020 bond didn't pass, that we do, I forget that
Bridge
certificate of participation in order to keep our commitment to the voters on Benson.
But what's the heart of your question?
well, I guess I'm asking if, I guess let me try to reframe the question. Did we take out any of the things that we could have done in the 2017 design phase of Benson because of the budget deficit that we was looking at?
No, it still meets the program, it still meets the standards that were in place at the time of the design.
Including lead.
Exactly,
And
including lead.
And also just even though we passed our, it was before we passed our climate response policy, we still had a significant lens on all of that design work for sustainability. And each of those earlier projects being LEED certified, even the 2012 are all LEED certified, aren't they? At some level, yes. So it wasn't like such a dramatic shift, even though in order to meet our greenhouse gas emissions, that's going to significantly influence the design process. And it's already really exciting with Jefferson, the way the architects are talking about it, because it has a huge impact, which is really energizing and exciting.
Another question. So moving forward, have we did a cost analysis to see, as an example, to see what it would cost us to go to all electric at this point, and what effect that would have on budget and on students?
For Benson?
For Benson.
Yes, we have, and there's some comments about it in the memo. I'll let Marita sometimes.
Actually, I'm gonna ask Armin Milazzo to join me up here at the table. Armin is our senior project manager for Benson, and he put together the information on the cost and schedule impacts for that. So I'd rather he speak because he'll be able to give you more detail.
That's fine. Just make sure you speak
I was
up.
having a hard time hearing back, so I was trying to keep up at the same time.
Gotcha.
The question is the impacts on Benson if we were to try to implement all electric at this point in the construction.
So right now in construction, we're 40% complete. So the stop point to redesign, do the permitting, and then retrofit a lot of the construction that's already in place, a lot of the slabs and foundations that would be needed. We're looking at about 2 years. We also need to bring in a completely new electric service into the building from the street because we don't have enough power. Because the power consumption for that is something that's a lot.
So you're talking about additional 2 years. So instead of it being
Adding 2 years.
So instead of 2024, it'd be 2026.
Correct.
Do we have a cost that would entail?
Just on the design and construction side, at least $8 million. That doesn't include the swing sites and what that impact would have as well.
It also doesn't include any impact to future modernizations that are looking to swing to the Marshall campus. So it will shift our future modernizations out. And that could have an impact on escalation costs as well.
Cleveland.
So it's just me. I mean, when we're talking about, $300 and something million, without having a full cost analysis of what it would entail in totality. And it's how I look at it. If I'm looking at $300 and something million and we're talking about $8 million, that doesn't really seem like a big stretch to do in order to get to where we want to get to. But I'm sure it's a lot more stuff that goes into that. Like you said, the effects on having on other modernizations. So I guess for me, if I had something that will show everything in totality, it would give me a better sense of, why we shouldn't or why we should do something. When I look at $8 million, couple years, that doesn't seem like that much. But I don't know what the effect would have like on the other modernization pieces. Do that push Cleveland out? But we don't have a bond for Cleveland yet. We don't have a bond for Ida Wells yet, right? So not saying that we won't get it, but we don't have it. And so I would just want to know what that effect would be in totality of that. Because from my understanding, Jeff is not going to Marshall. So from my understanding at this point, Jeff is not going to Marshall. So after 2024, if we don't have the bond for the other two, then that building is be empty still, right?
Yes,
If we,
I mean,
if we
yes,
don't get the
but
other
there will
bond.
also be cost impacts to the escalation on the two,
Right.
whether we have the.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I said if we can get it in totality. So if it's going to be, if you said 8 million, but it really could be 28 million or 30 million, I think that would be a number that we can really sit down and say, oh, okay, that's a little different than $8 million. That's just my thought.
I mean, that's just one piece of it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, the impact to the
Of course.
students and the breach of the commitment to the community is another piece. Another thing that's of interest to me is with all the additional sustainability features in the modernized Benson High School, what is the difference when you solely look at the HVAC system as one factor among all of those other factors in terms of how green the building ends up to be?
Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's contingent on the utilities cleaning up the grid, right? So they have a commitment, both PG and Pacific Power, to be 100% renewably powered by 2040. So theoretically, if we're 100% electric at that building, by 2040, we'd be 100% clean energy. And that's the whole goal of why we're trying to electrify our systems. But yeah, if you have gas infrastructure in the building, that's always going to be what it is, right? It's never going to be cleaner than when you install it.
But what about just in the whole sort of galaxy of inputs into that building in terms of other energy efficiency efforts and other, solar, you've got energy generating components on it. Just I don't have a sense of how big a factor the HVAC system alone is relative to all those other positive inputs.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know now because of the way the grid is. That was kind of the point I was trying to make is if it is electric, eventually it's going to be 100% clean energy, which would comply with the policy. Of course, generating on-site renewable through solar is going to help us. Being more energy efficient is going to help us, but we also know that the HVAC system at Benson is going to be the biggest energy user as far as building systems go. So energy efficiency is one way to reduce our emissions. Electrification by 2040 is one way to reduce our emissions. It's all about finding out the piece of that puzzle to get to that goal. Electrification, we know, will get us there, assuming the utilities continue on their trajectory to be 100% renewable. And that's the one caveat with gas, is that if we have gas in our buildings, it's going to emit the same amount of emissions no matter what. So that's the whole conundrum between energy efficiency and fuel sources.
Okay. Any other questions from committee?
I have some questions.
Okay. We know you got some questions. I just want to make sure.
Oh, you want to see if?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I have
Mr.
none.
Green. All right.
I have none.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to see that the memo that was written about this mentions the cost benefit analysis. So I'd like to see a copy of that and when it was done. And I'd like to understand, because when the committee looked at the different requirements for new construction versus our existing infrastructure, looked at the utility bills, and we pay more resources in funds to Northwest Natural than we do to PGE currently. And so I'd like to know what if, assuming you move ahead, what the annual carbon emissions are going to be from having the boilers, the hot water heaters, and the kitchen equipment. And I think when we discussed this earlier, some of that would be in the building for over a decade. So what's the carbon emissions, and in addition to the cost benefit analysis, what impact is that going to have on it, for how long? And then, my construct in the policy committee was we gave the district till 2050 to phase out existing fossil fuel infrastructure. But I was really thinking that would be about the time that we hopefully worked our way all through all the modernizations and had improved things, not that we would be then giving a new building until 2050 to remove things. So I'd like some of that data on, say, if there's a decision made not to do anything, what is the impact going to be? Because the way that the policy was constructed, it wasn't you hit the target for this piece of it. It wasn't hit the target, or you have an option to do these things, or you can do some of these things to hit the target. It was, we're expecting the district to hit the target and no more fossil fuel infrastructure, especially in new construction. And I don't know how the miscommunication happened, but I never imagined that Benson wasn't new construction. So the whole conversation in the committee, it never occurred to me that it wasn't going to comply. So I guess one of the things of just
It was already like 2 years in, right?
But I went to the groundbreaking, and like new construction didn't seem to be happening. So I guess I'm just trying to explain my state of mind is like, I never thought, it never occurred to me that it would be. And so I guess I'm interested in just understanding kind of the cost benefit analysis that happened, and then what will be the impact on our targets and our emissions, assuming we don't change that, or like what the plan would be. And again, just as a layperson, I wasn't thinking something's in design that's not actually that like is now current.
So
this is like it's just a, I mean, I believe it was like a miscommunication. Like
gotcha.
I didn't ask a really specific question, but I would like to have that to better understand.
So gotcha. So I want to get a sense of the committee as, is this something that we are looking to recommend to the board if we're going to stop and change to do something, or is this just for informational piece? Because I guess what I'm looking at is we're gathering information. We need to be gathering information for a purpose, right? So,
Right.
Hold on, hear me out. So if we're gonna, and I'm okay with which way we want to go. If we want to look at, we want to make a recommendation to the board of stopping, as an example. I don't want to do it. I want business to be done. But but if that's what we're saying, we're going to make a recommendation to the board one way or the other, then I can understand getting a lot of information. But if that's not the purpose, or that's not the way we're going, then I just want to know what's the use of getting that information. Getting that information for this committee to do what with?
Well,
Right.
I believe this is going to be an issue with our broader community, because so if we did a cost benefit analysis and it was really compelling, like the piece about the science labs, like we don't have a replacement for the Bunsen burners. Like I can go out and explain that, but we had so much community input, and we actually specifically had a discussion about a very detailed discussion. It was one of the few things that the full board discussed about the fossil fuel.
Gotcha.
So I would like to see it so that first of all, so I can understand it, because it didn't come up in committee, and I don't think I'm ready to make any sort of, I don't have enough information to say like I'd be in favor of a recommendation.
I hear it. But that's what I'm saying is your goal to either make a recommendation to the board, or maybe not make a recommendation to the board.
My recommendation is to better understand where we are with this project, because because to me, it's contrary to our policy. And so I just want to understand, like, what was the cost benefit? When did it happen? And then also, if for example, if we aren't going to do something about it, what is the impact that has on our carbon footprint?
Okay. So we got time is running out, and I don't get too long. So I just want to make sure that we have a clear focus. For me, is a clear focus on, as a committee, what direction are we going to go. And I understand for you, for your, I'm not saying in personal, but for you to understand it, to talk to constituents and stuff. I think that's great. I mean, as a committee, I just want to know where we heading towards, or what you would like for us to head
Well,
towards.
I think we need to explain how moving ahead with Benson fits with our policy, and because to me it doesn't, and I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to make sense of it.
Right.
And
Okay, so let me.
And I also think we need to be able to. We had a lot of people at the table in the construction of this, and so collectively, are we going to decide? Yes. We've seen the data. We know what we have to do. We know what the impact is going to be, and here's how we're going to address it.
Okay, so let me
Just
get,
like there was no discussion about it at all.
Gotcha. So I just want to get a post from the committee, right, to see if this is something that we're going to potentially make a recommendation to the board on how we want to move forward with Benson. If we are in agreement with making a recommendation to the board, one way or the other, whether we're going to not do nothing or whether we are going to do something, then I think we need to make that decision if we are, and then we can go fact finding from that point as a committee. Not as how we want to do personal stuff, that's fine. But as a committee, if that's the direction we want to go in, I want to get a pulse of, we're saying we're going to make a recommendation to do something or not do something. Is that what we're thinking? Is that what would you like to do?
So I have one question. The only condition under which I would want to make a recommendation to the board is if staff came back and said that continuing the design process for Benson with all the sustainability features that are underway and with using fossil fuels for the HVAC system is going to jeopardize our climate crisis goals, is going to jeopardize getting there, then I would consider, this rather dramatic move to investigate pushing the project back by 2 years and breaking our promise to the community and all that. If that's the one question that I would like to see an answer for staff. Is this likely?
I can add some context to that too, because the policy, there's many different goals out with policy. Benson, as it's designed now, is going to reduce our carbon emissions as they are in our baseline, right? It's going to move us towards that goal of being carbon neutral. The one goal that it doesn't hit is phasing out natural gas infrastructure.
But as a whole,
30 years to do that.
Okay,
with
so
those other features.
So we got 60 seconds left on this topic. So I want to ask a quick question. How much time will it take for you guys to gather that information? If we're as a committee going to make a recommendation to the board one way or the other, and then I want to have a deadline that we're going to bring this back to make a recommendation one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think that information is going to be available. I think some of it's going to be dependent upon the greenhouse gas emissions analysis we're doing right now. Okay. We don't have all this information really available. And I also think, and I'll let Armin jump in here, when you say cost benefit analysis, I think, maybe that language implied that there, yeah, no, I understand. That there is a document and there's one document. This was, I believe, more of a discussion with literally dozens of designers and engineers that are a part of this process.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on record right now because we got like 15 seconds left. And even though I love Benson, I'm a techman through and through. I don't think at this point doing a big major change at Benson High School is going to benefit the kids at Benson High School. And we still have time to make changes. So I'm just going to record for me saying that that's where I'm at with that. I would like to hear the committee and what their thoughts on that, because if we're not going to go down that path, I don't want to waste everybody's time going down a path that we're really not going to go down. But if you guys agree with it, then we'll go down that path.
Sure.
Got
Just
it?
15 seconds.
You what?
Hold on, let me hear what it said.
I don't care about one way or another. As far as like, I'm ready for the school to be done personally, but
okay.
I don't
So we
really
got
care
two.
about the other stuff.
All right. Oh, sorry.
To me, the most salient point is your point that this construction of Benson is going to reduce our carbon footprint overall. And unless somebody comes back and tells me that Benson as currently designed is going to jeopardize our chances of meeting our climate goals, then I could not support that huge hit to the budget and breach of commitment to the community and impact on our students.
Okay, 15 seconds.
I appreciate the clarity you're trying to do. I want to emphasize this project is 40% of the way there. It would delay by 2 years. And if that's the case, and if the direction is to analyze this further, the first thing I need to do is contact the principal to let them know that there might be a potential delay of 2 years on this project. And so I think it's just important to note that our community will hear the ripple effects of this conversation. So I just want to make sure there's clarity going out of this meeting of what the next steps are.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I want to get to public comments.
So I'd like to answer your question.
Okay.
Because I actually think the information we were given, I think it's disappointing. It's like, it makes it sound like there actually was some sort of formal cost benefit analysis. And so when I asked for that, I wasn't thinking it was a big thing. It was just like, hey, show me what the discussion was so we can have a discussion. But it sounds like that doesn't exist.
There was, it's part of the design process if you participate in a DAG.
I'm sorry, but Dan just said it was people's, okay,
Go ahead,
it's
Marie.
it's my turn
Let me
to speak. So I wasn't asking for a whole list of new information. I just thought there was something that I could ask for to get, based on the memo that was given. And I don't want to delay in the project either. I also think that just like we made a commitment to the community, and please don't tell people that I'm supporting the delay of the project, but I also think as a board, we said there'll be no fossil fuel infrastructure in new construction. So we need to think about how we're going to talk about that. And
okay.
And that's what I'm trying to formulate in my mind, how we're going to talk about it. Because we never said, hey, if the overall project reduces, you can still use it. Because that wasn't what we said. So maybe this is we need maybe we need some bridge language to get us there, but we don't currently have it.
So what I hear you saying is, if we decide not to move forward as far as changing something, at the very least, you'll want some talking points moving forward to say why we decide to continue in this direction versus why we didn't stop it and move.
Well, and like, what's our bridge? So I don't know everything that's in design, because I'm thinking like, hey, when the construction's happening, that's new construction.
Gotcha.
And so how do we frame it? And maybe this is just like getting them more specific. How do we reframe that and talk to our community about that?
Gotcha.
To me, I'm feeling a disconnect between what we passed and what we're doing, and I think other people will feel.
Oh yeah, sure.
Can I ask one quick clarifying question? Do you think that people in the community, when this policy passed at March or April, whenever it was, thought that Lincoln would then change all their infrastructure and they would delay the project? Because that is new construction.
Yeah, but it was like almost all the way.
It was in construction.
But Benson design was done in post.
Yeah, but design is different. Like, okay,
Benson
I'm a
was in
layperson. I'm thinking construction is like.
Benson was in construction when this passed. Planned,
in
designed,
very different.
permitted, in construction.
25%.
I want to get to public comments.
Sorry, and for the record, nobody's going to make any assumptions that Director Bryn Edwards or make any claims that Director Bryn Edwards is doing anything. So just for the record.
All right. So let's go to the public comments. We have any public comments?
We do. We have 2 people online. Melanie Klaus.
All right. Hello, Melanie.
Hi, thanks. So I want to talk about Benson, and I wish I'd been able to chime in a little bit earlier in your discussion. My name is Melanie Plout, Plaut. I'm a retired OBGYN physician who delivered thousands of babies here in town, and I also have a 5-year-old granddaughter in the district. I want to thank you for allowing me to testify. I have reviewed the August 19th memo about the Benson Modernization Program and the rationale, as you've been discussing, for continued use and the potential for additional costs if this decision is reconsidered. What I did not see in the memo and what I want to talk about is health concerns from continued use of methane. This is becoming the emerging story of why we should not burn methane in our buildings, and much of the information is new this year. So I'm going to briefly review a couple of studies from 2022 which raise concern. So first of all, in January, Stanford researchers looked at gas stoves and found that when they're used, the stoves emit dangerous NO2 levels within just a few minutes. If you're not familiar with NO2, it's a known health hazard regulated by the EPA. It's bad for our lungs and our brains. Among other things, it's associated with increases in childhood asthma, dementia, adolescent depression, and, according to the University of Chicago, bad calls by umpires. The same standard.
We've been looking for that reason.
Yeah. And in June, Harvard researchers found that unburned methane in homes is contaminated with multiple known carcinogens. So this is what's leaking from your stove, even when the stove is turned off, and it's contaminated with things like benzene, which there's no safe level of that. Also in June, a rather conservative medical organization, the American Medical Association,
30 seconds.
Recommended that its members inform patients about the health risks of using these stoves. And this week, the California Air Resources Board is going to recommend that we decrease our use of methane in buildings, not for climate reasons, but for health reasons. So I think that you may be looking at some upcoming expensive retrofits if you install methane into Benson. Some things you might consider if you haven't already. Look for Inflation Reduction Act funds to try to mitigate these $8 million in extra costs. Make the electrification ready with the appropriate electrical work put in place, and at a minimum, require that smaller appliances such as stoves be electrified to minimize the health risks for students. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer questions or provide references.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have another couple of comments?
I think this has a different name than what's signed up. Is this Brian's? Do I have Brian Stewart here?
Yeah, he's there.
Brian? Well, while we wait on him, do we have any other public comments? All right. So we'll go with Mike, and then if he comes back, we'll go back to him.
I'm Mike Rosen. The decision to build Benson High School with fossil fuel infrastructure is in direct conflict with the climate crisis response policy, which clearly states no new buildings will be built with fossil fuel infrastructure. The district made this decision behind closed doors. The cost to rebuild Benson was more than $4 million. For electric heating would have been part of the original design. So cost. Time when PPS was already building all electric buildings that should not have been valued. The cost to correct this mistake is $8 million, which is less than 2% of the cost. Contrary to PPS's conclusions, a redesign for electric would likely delay the Benson by 1 million. PPS assessment of this issue includes 3 key factors. What the future costs of the retrofit to electric will be. Retrofit within 30 years is also part of the policy. What the future impact to human health and environment will be from 30 years of fossil infrastructure. And we learned this afternoon that a cost-benefit analysis was never. Now the community needs to decide how and at what cost to correct this PPS scenario. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? before we move on to the next topic?
The committee's. If the committee's not going to pursue it, which it sounds like there's not an interest, I would still like some information on it. Separate.
No one else unless Brian's.
Yeah, Brian. Is he here yet?
I think this is in the room.
And Melanie was the last person.
She already did. Okay, so all right. So if we can ask for Grace for any additional time, we want to talk about the Tubman relocation piece. So if we can do at least 20, 25 more minutes extra past 5:30 would be great. I really want to get to that as well. And then the Bond Accountability Committee and the Public School Modernization, I know they sent materials. So I'm gonna ask the committee if they can just review those, and then if it's okay with them, unless you guys want to stay after to do a full report on it.
Is there anybody here from the BAC?
Kara.
Oh, yeah, online.
This is online. I have a question about the BAC. So,
Sorry, y'all, I'm here.
Hi, sorry.
It's okay. My dog was like, I'm starving. Can you please feed me? So, hi, Kara Toronto. BAC, I guess I'm like the incoming chair. And I'm just going to really quickly run through some of the highlights of our report.
Oh, we weren't asking about the report right now.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to get to another one. We're saying that we might not get to the report today.
That's even better.
Oh, okay. Well, going by that enthusiasm, we're just going to go ahead and just let you go for that one. We appreciate you staying on to do that. I mean, we just have our committee members just look at the materials that was sent in for the Bond Accountability Committee, if that's okay with the committee.
We'll let you know if we have any questions.
Perfect. We only had one meeting and it was all focused on technology and curriculum. And I can guarantee you after attending this meeting, it was much less of a robust discussion and things are going quite well.
All right. Well,
there we go. There's the report.
We got a question.
I have a general question. This is whoever is the budget master of the whole bond, and you can send me somewhere else. But we voted on the curriculum for the dual language programs, and it was $500,000 over budget, and it was the curriculum generally, it was 53 million and now it's projected to be 70. And so we paid the $500,000 extra with general fund dollars. And I'm interested in just a larger like reconciliation of where we are. And again, I don't know, I know tech's got a piece and the bond and the curriculum has a piece, but I'm just concerned that, $500,000 here, $500,000 there from our general fund to pay for things that could be, I'm looking at you because you're the closest to the bigger umbrella, but we don't need to have a discussion now, but I'd like to understand how that whole piece fits, because I don't want us to be spending general fund dollars on things that we anticipated would be spent with the
amount of money.
So to clarify, this is about curriculum and technology specifically.
Yes.
Question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know like the fee also that went out and then came back was around replacement for the devices. And so I just want to make sure we promise voters X, this is what we thought the budget was, and if we go over budget, like how we're making those adjustments within the bond budget versus using general fund dollars, which is how we pay for teachers and staff and everything else.
We won't send you somewhere else. We'll get that.
The other piece of that conversation that's of interest is that we know that there are some of the curriculum, less so technology, more curriculum that are not bond compensable because they're professional development. And so when those contracts come to us, those get separated out. So I don't think I've ever seen that shown where it shows exactly how much is general fund and how much is bond.
Forwarded it to the board. It was 3 board meetings ago because I asked Alberto.
So that was for one contract.
Right, but it was $500,000.
Okay, so
thank you.
We got that information, so we'll try to get that information, and we'll figure out a way to get information to our committee members and work with Dan on how we formulate things like that for our committee members. All right, let's get to the Tubman. Thank you. Let's get to the Tubman relocation update.
Yeah.
Who's reporting on that? Oh, Dan. Okay.
We're gonna kick it off.
Anybody else reporting on this?
Some more new faces up. Okay. Oh, did I stop sharing? Maybe not. Roseanne, do you know how I make it bigger?
It has to stay small like that, Dan.
Everyone wants to move real close.
It just has to stay small like that. You gotta deal with it, Dan.
Well, we'll get it.
Not just because of today, but.
What's that?
Yeah, they all get it on the back burner.
Well, we'll be sure to be verbose. So next topic is update on the Tubman relocation. And we'll I know we're short on time, so we'll try and go through quick, and then we'll get to questions. So quick agenda. We're going to do an overview. Then we're going to talk about due diligence, reciting document volume 4, which is in your packet, and then we'll get to committee feedback. Just real quick, this just is a highlight of what our efforts to date have been. Our last meeting was in June. We've done an additional analysis and engagement since then. That is really intended to. This is just a presentation.
Yeah, the case.
I don't know how.
Oh, it's his. Got it.
Oh. Okay.
We're working on it. But what this is just calling out is that we met last in June, where we went through the details of due diligence volume 3. We've done an additional analysis based on feedback we received at last meeting. Volume 4, which is pretty beefy, is now available. So, community engagement. Jonathan, you want to say something real quick about engagement? Oh, there he is.
Fine, Dan.
Yeah, so really quick, and you can read there, we've reached a juncture in the project that requires us to reset the engagement strategy, including recognizing the work from our community today, updating all stakeholders on the work done today, resetting the selection criteria with the community, and this is all as a result of aligning selection with the Center for Black Student Excellence design process. So we are finalizing the details this month. By September 30th, we will have a finalized engagement plan that connects all of these three major projects in the Albina neighborhood. Camille Idedabo, who's our innovation studio manager, who couldn't be here because she is at one of our schools, is developing the plan in partnership with the Center for Black Excellence. And so again, the goal here is to have all of our communities in the Albina neighborhood to expect a holistic discussion about how the built environment supports our Black students in the Albina neighborhood.
Okay, so with the community engagement piece, and I know this is something we got this same report a few months ago as well. When Camille, since we pivoted and Camille is doing the new engagement process, is she been giving direction on what we're looking for out of those community engagement processes, those community engagement events?
The short answer is yes. We've been working again in collaboration with our community partners to make sure that we have a shared vision for what is the engagement moving forward. I was trying to, but I know.
So you said September 30th that we will have an engagement plan from her.
Correct. And how do I do this? If I can, if you give me 1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to take public comment.
Okay.
I know we have some. Yeah, let's go to public comments. I know they have some. So,
So we don't.
Oh, we don't have any?
Sign down.
Yeah, so Tyler and Tiffany both were here our PTA, the Dr. Martin Luther King Junior PTA president and vice president. They had to go back to school because they're having a lot of family night tonight. So is the update for this specifically just that there's a community outreach update? Is that the Harriet Linden update?
Yeah, that's pretty much the update.
That's all.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So.
Well, we are going to go through. Sorry, the option, the site options.
So you will be going through site options. Okay, I'll wait until we
Okay.
get to that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And Vice Chair, I just want to highlight, I just added a slide here, which is a preview. It's still in draft, but you can see how this is our journey map for the design process of the Center for Black Excellence, and all the corresponding projects are a lot. Again, it's too small to see here, but you can see 4 phases carried out by months. There are 4 different areas. Our work with the Center for Black Excellence Board and Steering Committee, the design team, which is the folks that are going to help us think through those questions that you just mentioned, the community engagement, and you can see some of the activities there that are being worked on. Camille is at Dr. King today for this event and is collaborating with our principals to finalize all of our community engagement dates that we then will publish. So that's the work under. So right now, you can see this at a high level. We're working on the double click so that you know exactly what dates and where our families are going to be engaged and how.
Right.
We're going to keep moving along. We wanted to do a quick schedule update. There's lots of variables, of course, in the schedule. We don't have a site selected depending on what that site is. The tasks that are necessary to relocate will change, the timelines will change, but we want to give you a general idea of where we think the schedule might land. And so let Patrick LaBeouf talk about it.
Yeah, so this is the original schedule. Kind of the big one on this one is we were anticipating a site selection sometime springtime of this year. I'm going to go to the next slide. And the big change here would be the ODOT work, which is the green areas up top. And so ODOT accelerated their schedule, widening the freeway by a year. And so instead of 2027 start, they're starting in 2026. And there's our target selection date still this spring. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is our updated schedule. So the ODOT work is again showing starting widening the freeway in 2026. How that impacts us is we just need to make sure that we are able to get the Tubman students out of Tubman to a temporary swing site before that viaduct widening starts, which shouldn't be a problem. The permanent site construction, according to our schedule here, start roughly around mid-2026. That's assuming that we make a site selection sometime in spring of next year.
Do we have a identified swing site for Tubman?
Not officially, but we've kicked around the idea of maybe a Kent.
Kenton's probably the one that's closest to us,
Yeah.
so obviously when you change it to Benson would impact that as well.
Okay, thank you. Quick overview of the discussion in June. This from a process standpoint, we looked at this last time where just kind of as a refresh, when we initially started this here a year or so ago, our goal was to find that perfect site, undeveloped in the neighborhood, perfect size. We did not find that. So from there, we expanded our search. We looked at more criteria, and our goal was, to find the best site with the least amount of trade-offs, hoping for fairly small trade-offs. That has proven to be pretty challenging as well, as the options are somewhat dwindling and still are challenging. We have to start to consider, more significant trade-offs. Some of those trade-offs that, we've said that we would not broach these first 6 items are just things that we talked about last time. These would be, if we moved into any of these, and some of these I think are just non-starters, that would be pretty significant. And so we'd have to be, we're trying to be very careful about our criteria and ultimately what the selection would be. At the June meeting, there were 6 sites that we walked through. Two of them ultimately we decided to not proceed with further site analysis of. That was the Emmanuel and Lloyd Center site. Four of them we looked to continue additional analysis, which is in volume 4, and then we added back in the Jefferson main lot analysis. So that all that is captured in volume 4. So we'll run through each one of those and answer questions, and I'll let Dana White.
Sure, for BESC, or PESC, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what their
We'll
actual.
get there.
We're gonna get there, okay, because PESC sounds a little weird. I'm not sure I like it.
You prefer
We
the
have a
profit
policy for
center?
those. I do, I like the profit center.
Yeah.
actually. I think that's cool.
I know the faith community would love that.
Yeah. Good old cross, anyway, I digress. This site, of course, has plenty of land, so that, and it's in the Tubman boundary. So those are the two big pluses for this. We already own it, but we have the risks of development for, we'd have to relocate, of course, this site. We obviously have our agreement with ABT. It's potentially very expensive, and there's a lot of surrounding area development that may be many, many years. So you're really in an industrial area for quite a while for the kids. So. But we do recommend continuing to analyze this because it is quite honestly the only site that we have found, as you'll see as we go through the rest, that has this within Tubman boundary and has enough land. So we looked at Meek Professional Technical School. This is a nice site. We own it. It's smaller, but it's 5 acres. It's in a residential area. It's just outside the eastern edge of the boundary, but it is outside the boundary, which we decided was not a viable option. So discontinued.
And which
Still
are,
have it on the list? Look like
Well,
it's
this is
still
we're
on.
telling. This is what we're telling. We're saying here's what we're taking off the list.
and also our community has told us that.
Yeah, that's that.
So sorry, it was confusing. So we're just walking through in the volume 4. These are the sites that had the detailed analysis in volume 4, and then what the recommendation is going forward. Sorry.
So the Jefferson South lot, this one's come up a lot. It's about 2 acres, and of course we own it, and it's within the boundary. However, it is too small to accommodate a comprehensive middle school. It would be unavailable for development until after 2026. The impacts to Jefferson High School are material, because we would need to then take all of the services that for those kids for outdoor things and put them onto the Jeff campus. There's basically no field space. The architects said this is really a bad idea. We would need to have probably a 4-story building with no outside space, not a lot of light. I mean, it's just really not a pleasant idea for our kids. So we recommend no further consideration of that site at this time.
I will add that last night at our Jefferson Comprehensive Planning Committee meeting, there were a lot of concerns and questions about whether this was still on the table. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I kind of told them it wasn't.
Despite
Well, that's interesting because I had a meeting with about 40 alumni from Jeff, and they were saying the exact opposite. So I think the community engagement piece is going to be really important.
Yeah.
When it comes to when we're talking about this piece, and so we're going to really need to. It's going to be really important to present this stuff to the community and let them know what they're giving up, what they're not giving up, so they can make a decision, and then we can take that into consideration and really figure out what we're going to do here. Because like you said, the conversations that you had at the Jefferson piece, and the conversations that I'm having, stuff is everybody's having these separate conversations. Everybody's getting all these inputs from different people, and they're not all coming together to really see what are we giving up, what are we missing, how are we doing stuff. I talk with people from the city. They'll say, "Oh, well, this is just talk." People say, "Hey, well, we can if we're talking about doing Jeff on the north side of the field, well, we can get exemptions and waivers to for the setbacks and things like that, right?" So those are those conversations that I think we need to make sure that we have with everyone at the table, so we're all looking at the same thing and we're all talking about the same thing.
And I believe we just voted the other night at the Center for Excellence may
have a recommendation around Jeff.
Yeah, well, they're gonna get probably in, that's the whole, the
Right,
new
so
pivot
it's
piece that we've
it's another
done.
piece of it, though.
They're gonna be looking at the whole thing in totality as well, which is Jeff and Tubman and how they're gonna do that. But I think that's why this community piece is gonna be so important, because we don't have these off conversations. One group is saying one thing, some other community groups are saying other things, and without everyone having the total information that we have, having the city at the table. If there is variances that we can get, or setbacks we can get, waivers on to move the how it was when we talked about the setback with the new coding. If they're saying we can do it, that might give us a different option of what we're looking at, right? And it was even brought up, well, can we build on top of over the library that's there, right? I don't know. I mean, those are just some options to give you more floor space, more. So those things that I think, we have to have everyone at the table doing all the conversations together to really look at, if we're looking at this site as opposed to just saying no. Just a thought, but.
The other, the next site is, are you on the main, did you go past the main lot?
Oh, sorry, I did.
Probably not in there yet.
No, go for it, sorry.
Okay, the main lot. So we looked at two different configurations on the Jefferson main lot, and you can see, and this is where potentially Director Hollins, if there was a change in access or setbacks, where that red line is on the right, that would prohibit us from putting a track in there. So potentially there's something that could be done there, but it's a very crowded site. You end up with just basically the track and field area, and it has impacts to both schools. One of the things we like to think is really important is light, outside space, things like that really get compromised on both the south lot and the main lot. So we're recommending not going in.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is the one, this part as far as having them on the same, whether it's on the main lot, that everyone disagreed with that. I didn't have anyone that was like, oh, that might be a good idea. But once again, I go back to the south lot piece, being able to have, then you have the track now because you don't have that piece there, depending on how the school is. And maybe just have to figure out a shared usage for the athletic fields. Or when we're looking at other stuff like other with their long-term facilities plan, some of those other sports hubs that we're talking about. Well, maybe we look at what we can do to invest in those, so those schools can have that and they can move forward, moving around that way as well. So, just a thought.
Sure. We also looked at Humboldt, which, as we all know, is under a lease agreement we have with Kairos right now, so not readily available lot, but it is, of course, close to Jefferson, and it is land that we own, and it is enough land for us to build there. So there are some benefits to that if there was some way to work that out. Of course, the risks are the impacts to the Jefferson schedule, as well as having Kairos there and our lease there. You're adding more and more variables into trying to figure out how to get everybody in the right place. So that would be a challenging one. We don't think that's.
So have we had conversations with Kairos about that option?
I mean, I think at the high level that they've conveyed that they're not interested in moving.
Is that a yes? We had a conversation with them?
We've had conversations, but there's no decision making by any means, and so
I'm just wondering what their thoughts
on the. I wouldn't be able to say holistically what their opinion is, but right now the site's not available for development.
But I think we can say there's a willingness to have a conversation that if there's a way that they can come out with something better, like if there's a way to partner and they get a piece of a new facility, I think it would be worth having the conversation.
Well, no, and that'd be great. But are they willing to have that conversation?
Yes, they are.
So my thought would be just me personally. I don't know where everybody else sits. Just me. This is a nightmare. We just did this for this school. It was such a big deal, and we're all for it. And then now we say, and this is just me, again, I don't know about anybody else. Now we say this, it is one of our buildings. They are on the lease, but to me, it's a no-brainer. To me, there should have been a line through this. It shouldn't have been on the list. And unless Kairos themselves comes to us and says, hey, PPS, let us share with you some ideas around what we think and how we could benefit, we shouldn't even be talking about Humboldt right now. That's just my humble opinion, knowing the community, knowing people and how this works. This is a political nightmare. It is a community nightmare. It is just a nightmare all the way around. This is like, you don't do this. This is like sleeping with your sister.
I don't think
You don't do this. This stuff don't work.
I don't think anybody has said, like, let's figure out a way to get Kairos out of the building. I think it's just, is there
It shouldn't even be a conversation unless they come to us and be like, please, let us consider this, consider us. I mean, that's just, and I'm gonna stop because now we all know exactly at least how I feel about it. There's no misunderstandings around, I wonder what Herman Green thinks.
Gotcha.
No.
Gotcha.
Well,
And that's kind of where we're going with that. Unless they are in agreement with doing something, then I wouldn't support
100%.
it either, unless they were willing to do something that benefits them,
100%.
however that is.
And if I can just say real quick, we put on here, this is unavailable for development, but it was worth doing the analysis to be, should we even have the conversation, or is this site not even a potential option? Therefore, it's just infeasible regardless.
Question. Now, this is if they are willing to do something. We could use this and the south lot at Jefferson, right? To do things, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So again, as Dan said, staff considers the site not viable, all the reasons you just outlined, and no further analysis at this time.
Okay.
So we're getting down to the last part of volume 4 or version 4, where we do our plus minus, no actual quantitative numbers, just really this positive or negative on the sites. We've seen this before. Running through those. And we're back to the ESC as being the only one that.
Now I'm gonna ask staff this.
Okay.
Why would you guys recommend the Profit Center? Right. Why would you recommend the Profit Center when you said it was cost prohibitive? The $120 million is not going to get the job done. It's in an industrial neighborhood where it's not a community neighborhood in there. Like, why would
You got a better idea?
Right. No. Well, I'm just saying, why would that be a recommendation? Rather, for you saying, okay, well, maybe we need to look at the Jefferson site so that is in the community, is more accessible to kids. Walkability piece. I understand the constraints of not having certain facilities there, but when you look at that from a 6th, 7th, 8th grade lens, I would think that at the very least that would be a recommendation, as well as maybe putting in the Profit Center moving forward. So I'm just curious on that aspect.
I think so. This is a recommendation to continue analysis, and we want to look at the site. We're looking at the financials. We want to get a better idea of what that is. We think it's expensive.
Well, yeah, but it's going to be way more than 120 million.
Potentially other options are as well. So it's the trade-offs, right? And so we want to get a better sense of what that is. But I think to your point of maybe all of these options, or in particular the Jefferson South lot, I think we're going to continue, with some level of analysis, and we'll take feedback from this. But I also think I don't think the next version of this is going to be out next month. I think we want to wait for some of that community engagement to, I don't want to say catch up. I can't think of a better word right now.
Yeah.
To catch up to help inform.
But with that community engagement piece, I still think we need to have, the ones on there. I understand you guys want to recommend to stop further analysis. I don't think we should. But this is just my voice. I see what the committee wants. I think we still should continue to look at the Jefferson sites, even the Meek sites, the Humboldt sites, if Kairos would want that. And then that's what we present to the community, and then let them get that to get that community engagement piece and the input from them as well.
Yeah, and is it fair to say, and I think this is super helpful because what we want to do next, I think we're at the point where we don't need to do, if these are the options, if let's say we want to keep all 5 of these, of going out and taking the tape measures out and doing a lot more measuring. It's more of getting that community feedback and letting those meetings be scheduled. And so what I'm hearing is, let's have maybe all of these, or at least the Jefferson options and the BSC options.
I would say, and you guys let me know what you guys think. The Jefferson South Lot piece, maybe.
Can you run it back up? The South
That's
Lot.
the one on.
That's the one with the
That's the one on the south of Alberta.
Okay.
That's the one south of Alberta.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking
And then, you can use Meek, but like I said, I don't know why would we do Meek because it's outside the catchment area. But at least we'd put the Jefferson site up there and the Kairos site and this is a hard if Kairos was in agreement and something could be worked out to where they would be enthusiastic about doing something.
They would end up in a better situation.
Yeah, well, yeah, but as long as they see that, right? We can't say they're going to be in a better situation. They have to feel that they're going to be in a better situation. So I would put those on, but that's just me. What do you guys think?
So what's your question that you want us to answer?
So my question, can we go to the recommendations pieces that you guys had at the end? Yeah, so I'm asking to further analyze Jeff South Lot, and I don't like Humboldt site. I would like to say Cairo site and Jeff and Jefferson South Lot, and then possibly Meek School as the 4th or 5th option. I would hate, and I also would, and this is just me. I will also throw in. This is just me. I want to make sure that I am speaking for myself, not for the district, not for anyone else. But looking at, and I'm glad we have our attorney here, looking at what would it take to do eminent domain for the Irvington Park site and what that would look like.
You do eminent domain on another public
Well, that's why we have our attorney to look at that and see.
He used the words.
Well, remember, this is for our kids. It's not for our adults. This is for our kids. And if we're really going to be children centered, we have to look at all options and put all options on the table. Now, if it comes back and they say, "Oh, that's a terrible idea," or we legally can't do it, or something, but at least want to look at the option. If they're not willing to have in conversation with us, I would want to look at that option.
I would like to clarify what I shared with the Jefferson Planning Group last night. What I said is basically off the table. What I said actually was that the Jefferson site, even including the South Lot, does not meet our current program requirements that we have for both the high school and the middle school.
And that's 100% correct. Yes. And that's what I want to, when we're having those community engagements about that, that's what I want to have out there. Hey, you guys, this is what it is. It doesn't meet everything. But if this is what you guys are recommending, we'll take that back and we'll look at it and take it into consideration. But I want them to understand that if you do this, you're going to lose this. And you're going to lose that. If you don't, I just want to make sure they have that information.
I said at this point, it's not really under consideration because.
Gotcha.
I just want to clarify.
Gotcha. So any other questions, comments, concerns?
So I'll just say, I personally think Meek should be off the list because it's just not in the catchment area.
Okay, she said she think Meek should be off the list.
Because it's not in the catchment area.
I agree.
And I don't know how many times we've had a conversation about Kairos, but when I had a conversation with them, I didn't think there was any interest.
I didn't either.
And so.
But that's why we said if it is. But they might have a change of heart. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying they might have a change of heart. I don't want to limit their options.
Well, then it should have some other qualifier on it because otherwise it just looks like any other site.
I hear you.
So to me, I'd add some sort of qualifier if you're going to leave it on, and then somebody needs to go have a conversation. It's like, hey, we're going to take it. If you don't want it to be on, we're going to take it off.
Right.
We could leave it on if that's okay, but it's just like we've gone around and
I hear you.
This.
So I'm agreeing with taking Meek off.
Yeah, I'm good.
I think we heard pretty clearly from the community that it just wasn't in the community.
Okay, well, we'll take Meek off, and then we just have the two on there and go from there.
Same reason as Kenton.
Okay. All right. Any other? Oh, now public comments. I don't know if they have one at the end.
Hi, I'm Rosalie Blair from I'm the PTA treasurer at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School Connection. I preferred giving this as so we are still feeling very strongly about PESC not being a good option for our students. Moving them from Harriet Tubman to this location doesn't seem like it's going to be a very big win in terms of air quality, which is what the whole reason why we're even talking about this, right? And we still really like the idea of the South Lot for Jefferson. We think that with the Center for Black Excellence, it'll be really great to be able to just kind of pull the community together. It's also close to Dr. Martin Luther King, and it's not too far away. So it's just really keeping the historic Black community and schools together. And I think that we're in a city, and we need to think like that. We're building an urban school, and we need to be innovative. And we need to figure out how we can make it work within the parameters that we have. And I think we can do this. So I'd love to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have any other public comments? Questions, concerns? All right. So I thank everybody for their continued patience today, and we're going to adjourn the meeting.
Wait. Don't adjourn. I got to at least say one thing.
Oh, that's right.
I gotta say one thing. Because my word is my bond.
Yes.
It is all that I have. My word is all that I have.
And I was supposed to kick that to you.
Nope. It's cool.
Okay.
It's cool because we were running long.
Gotcha.
But today, this is my first facilities and operations meeting where I'm actually intentionally supposed to be a part of it. I've been visiting schools all week, and today I had the pleasure of being at Ockley Green, which was amazing. I got to meet Green, who's the assistant principal. I met him last year, but I was meeting actually with Reiser, and it was imperative that I wanted to talk about it because this is all student driven. So while I'm there, I'm walking around. They're showing me some things. They're introducing some things, and talking about the school and what it has and what some of the challenges that they're facing. But this was with me and Mr. Reiser. So I expect that when I'm talking with teachers. What stood out to me was when I actually got into the classroom. And I stayed for the first 15 to 20 minutes of his class so that I could check it out and interact and engage with the kids. And he introduced me as Herman Green, who is also one of our school board members. And the moment that he said that, one of the kids in the back raised their hand and said, if you're on the school board, can you talk to them about our portable, which got some holes in it, that it looks like rats have been coming through, and I've got the pictures on my phone for evidence. So now I'm paused because I'm like, oh, now we had seen some of this stuff, and let me state this. If Reiser had brought this up, and I love him, but if Reiser would have been the one bringing this up, I would have let it go. I've been like, that is what it is, because he positioned these kids to take advantage of a moment, and they've been staged, and this is a setup, and they've waited their whole lives for this moment so they could share that with me.
Walk in the door.
But he didn't prompt them. The kids, all he did was introduce me as a school board member, and they immediately popped up with questions. If you're on the school board, can you do this? The other little girl, one young lady, said, can you also talk to them about not being able to get upstairs? I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, with COVID, I was in a wheelchair for a while, and if it wasn't for the online classes, I would have had to leave this school. I'm like, what do you mean you would have had to leave this school? And she said, because there's no way for me to get upstairs. There's no ADA accessibility for me to get upstairs. And I think we need an elevator. So if you're on the school board, can you tell them we need an elevator? And
Patrick's taking
what I said, because I make no promise. I said, I assure you that there's a facilities and I hadn't talked to the chair about this at all. And I knew the moment I left that I'd messed up because I said, I assure you that I will bring this up in the facilities and operations meeting today. They will hear it. So if there are any Ockley Green students from Mr. Reiser's second period class, I want to say thank you for bringing this to our attention. And although I cannot make any promises about anything being done, what I do want you to know, what I do want you to be aware of is that we as a committee, we as a team, and as a school district have heard you. We're listening, and we are going to take definitive actions into looking into this. Again, I cannot make any promises as to we're going to do this, this, and this. But I can promise you that you have been heard and your voice is important. So if there's anything else that you would like to share with the school board, or if there's anything else that you would like to share with your district, I want you to feel encouraged to reach out, to connect, to send emails, to write letters, to do whatever you need to do, because the only reason we exist is to make things better for you as students. Now, with that being said, I'm done.
All right.
No, I love taking notes.
Yes.
About Ockley Green.
And we're going to send an invitation out to them.
That would be
inviting
fantastic.
them to come and testify and talk about their issues at their schools, especially when we talk around ADA accommodations, because that was a big issue last year. And when we hear from kids, hopefully it'll move some heartstrings to make us really do what we said we were going to do moving forward. So
And purse strings.
and purse strings.
And purse strings.
And purse strings.
Thank you.
So
Student.
we are going to talk about the ADA stuff as well.
I was wondering, are we going to get a student assigned?
We have to talk to the DSC.
DSC.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we get one. All right. We're going to be adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
You should text me to remind me.
Man, I totally forgot. I'm sitting here following along and didn't realize we were done until you were saying, okay, with that. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
You should have reminded me that one. Oh, but no, I agree.
Push the button and the speech comes out.
I'm like, what is
Oh,
happening?
yeah.
Are we off the video?
Hey, Director.
Yeah.
I'm over there tomorrow. I'm talking.
When you going?
Tomorrow.
When tomorrow? I'll go with you.
Okay.
You tell me when, I'll ride with you.
All right. Let me look at my schedule right now.
Yeah. I'll meet you right out front.
What time y'all going? I want to go.
Come on
I
with
can't
it.
be leaving me out.
You just getting off your day job.
No, I don't work Friday, Saturday, and Sundays.
Oh, really?
No.
Friday?
Yeah. No Friday, Saturday, or Sundays.
Is it 9 a.m. work?
9 a.m. is fine. I ain't even got to look at my calendar and tell you that one's fine. Cause I dropped my wife off, and then she goes to her job, and then I generally